partner at the international law firm of Sydney, Austin. Mahmood, Mahboob received a jury doctor from Columbia University School of Law, a Master of Arts in Political Science from the Johns Hopkins University, and a Bachelor of Arts in Politics from Princeton University. So I welcome you, Mahmood. Our second speaker is Jehan. So I welcome Jehan. Jehan is the founder and CEO of Catalyst Labs, a tech startup accelerator and innovation hub. She is the former president of the Pakistan Software Houses Association for IT and ITES, PASHA, and the founder of Nest.io. And the Catalyst Lab runs an acceleration program for startups and women leaders fellowship program for women entrepreneurship and professionals. She's an expert in her field, so there's a lot to say about her. So I really, truly appreciate your coming here this afternoon. So our third speaker is Arshad Saeed Husain. He's the managing director of Oxford University Press, Pakistan. He has over 29 years of broad-based commercial experience working for leading multinational companies in pharmaceuticals, FMCG, and life sciences sectors. So I welcome you, Arshad. So finally, we have with us Ehsan Saya. He is the managing director of the RAS Pakistan, the biggest e-commerce marketplace. He brings over 13 years of experience across industries like investment banking and logistics and e-commerce. So I welcome you, Ehsan. All right. So, I would request our audience to come forward. It will be easier for us to engage in the conversation. So those of you who are sitting at the very last rows and the ones who are sitting at the extreme right-hand side, they can come in the center rows. Thank you so much. All right, so this conversation is quite interesting. It's very current, very timely. So I am really thrilled to have these experts with me. So I would like to start the conversation with our first most pressing understanding point, that how EdTech has diffused into our Pakistani scenario within these past 5 years. And I would like to start the conversation, and I can invite, first of all, Mahboob with his point of view on this, and then we can start off the conversation.
Thank you very much. My company, Knowledge Platform, was maybe the pioneer in EdTech in Pakistan. We started about 7-8 years ago. And now we serve hundreds of schools and hundreds and thousands of kids. It kind of, EdTech took a slow time to build up in Pakistan. And then COVID was a big accelerator, because a lot of schools and parents and kids started using some kind of technology intervention during the COVID period. So in some respects, that was a great development that took place. As COVID started waning, the government shut and started schools a lot. So we saw, first of all, a huge spike in use of education technology, and then a big drop. But now what we are seeing is very steady month-on-month growth in schools using education technology. So I would say that COVID accelerated, got people used to education technology, then they abandoned it because they wanted to go back to face-to-face, and now they're realizing, I think there's a more genuine growth that's taking place. And the users have become much more sophisticated in terms, because they've had some kind of experience over the last couple of years. So I won't say that we are at a tipping point, an inflection point where it's going to take off, but we might be 1 year or 2 years away from that.
With this understanding, and all of us who are very much interested in EdTech, we would like to hear that how these EdTech startups have actually contributed to this accelerated pace of use of technology in most of the sectors around us. And for that, I would request Jehan to throw some light on that.
So I think it's early days yet. There are a lot of young people who started EdTech startups because they felt that education was not being imparted in quite the way that it should, and also that access was not as good as it should be. Not just in Karachi, Lahore, Islamabad, but across Pakistan. And so many of them ventured to do that. Unlike Knowledge Platform, they did not have the funds or the access that companies like Knowledge Platform have because, you know, they've put in a lot of money, they've got partnerships, all of that. These startups had to struggle in order to make sure that the content that they created was marketed to all of Pakistan in an effective manner so that they could have customers use that content. You know, it's still a struggle, but some of them have done a brilliant job at it, simply because they've understood the problem because they face it themselves, understood the problem because it's all around them, and they've seen how effective it can be, and they've experimented. So some of them have actually created content which is in multiple languages, so that they address the language issue. There is a lot of content available all around the world that is available for free that's in English. But then that's a problem because a lot of the people in Pakistan, English is not our first language, and many of them don't understand English. So the fact that some of these youngsters recognized this problem and made sure that the content was available in multiple languages made it possible for them to reach a larger number of children, especially children, across Pakistan. But it's still a problem because they have not been able to do it as effectively because of the lack of funds, because of the lack of access, because of the lack of adequate connectivity. I know we say that a lot of Pakistan has connectivity, but even those of us who live in Karachi, Lahore, Islamabad complain about the effectiveness and the level of connectivity and the continuance of connectivity. So how much more so the rest of Pakistan? So I think these are things that will need to be addressed for startups to grow at the scale that they can. And then take this, some of them have decided not to focus on Pakistan and focus on taking their solutions global because it's easier, infrastructure already exists. But again, that is an expensive proposition. So I'll stop here and we can continue to discuss.
Thank you so much, Jahara. So I would like to connect this response that you have made. Maybe Mahboob, you can throw some light on it. As Jahara said that there are a lot of challenges in using EdTech. So how have you experienced and countered those challenges while you were building up your knowledge platform and expanding its reach to the larger audience?
Well, I think, you know, the challenges exist. I mean, the infrastructure challenges, but let me just talk about behavior and leadership. There are three, you know, there are students who are digital natives and they absorb education technology very easily, not a problem. Second is teachers, something of a problem, and the third is leadership. So I'll give two cases where we've had a lot of success and kind of some thoughts we've drawn from them. First one is a very, very old insight that has been part of education analysis from many, many years, which is leadership. So for example, we ran a program with Jazz and the Federal Directorate of Education, about 26,000 kids and teachers, about 1,000 teachers. We got amazing results over 1.5 years, 60% improvement in pre and post tests and so on. The biggest factor was that the person who was leading the area offices and the Federal Directorate of Education was a big believer. He got the area offices people involved, the principals involved, there was accountability, and it worked really well. So actually it was less to do with us than whenever you try to bring about a change, you need very, very strong leadership. So the schools that have strong leadership and foresight will be able to adopt more quickly and get good results. So it's an old-fashioned insight. The second thing, which is a little less old-fashioned, is we started creating games. And teachers would not use the games because in Pakistan, unfortunately, games are viewed as illegitimate form of learning. But the reality is just like all of us who are sitting over here, we read books much more than perhaps a lot of people in the population do, but we also play games. You know, we play chess and bridge and checkers and all kinds of learning games and crosswords. They almost know crosswords in Urdu. So we have a big population in Pakistan that does not play intellectual games. We started introducing games first through teachers, and it didn't work because the teachers themselves felt games were illegitimate form of learning. Then we started introducing games through kids. So last year we had about 800,000 kids with excellent learning outcomes, excellent retention through games. So what I have discovered is there's a games divide. Just as we talk about a digital divide or an education divide, there's a games divide as well. And, you know, for me, games was a very important part of how I became I think, moved towards being a 21st century learner, that you can think, in problem solve and critical thinking. So we hope that through games and technology-driven learning games, we can really bring about 21st century learning. And I'll tell you one thing, the kids are ready for it.
Thank you so much. That was very insightful. So we have seen the potential of educational games through your experience. So now I would like to come to Arshad. So you have been in this publishing field. So how has EdTech worked for you with all these challenges around you?
Thank you. So, this is a question that people often ask, that with technology and with e-books, what's going to happen to you? You print books. And so one thing I want to clarify, that as publishers, we at Oxford University Press create content. Printed book is just one form of delivery of that content. Content can be delivered in different forms. It can be in electronic or digital form, in the form of e-books. It can be in the form of movies, games. So there are multiple number of delivery methods in which content can be delivered. Building on to what Mahboob said, I think as far as digital education is concerned, we at OUP ventured into it globally several years ago. We believe that digital is the future, and it will, the way forward for us in Pakistan is going to be a blended approach. We don't think that digital will immediately come and take over the delivery of education, but it will be a combination of print and digital, where digital will support in the delivery of education. The other key aspect is, how do you use digital to improve access to education? And that is something that we have developed several digital platforms to enable people to improve their learning and education. And thereby they're able to use the content or access the content anytime, anywhere, at their convenience. And for us, I think that is, we see that as the future, where learning will eventually become extremely personalized and individualized to individual learners. They will be able to use the content, be it in the form of print or digital, but at their convenience, preferably, whenever they have time, they can access it to be able to enhance their learning outcomes.
Thank you so much, Arshad. Let's build up the conversation further. So, Ehsan, you have an experience with e-commerce, and that is a fascinating arena itself. So, we would like to you to share your learnings from that experience. How have you been using this technology platforms to support your user experience, user engagement, and then user satisfaction as well? So we can then further connect it with our educational technology.
Sure. No, I think one thing to keep in mind is that even at the base of e-commerce, especially in a country like Pakistan, education is still the foundation of it. I'll give you an example. We asked, this was a few years ago, we did a survey and we asked one of our sellers, if you sell a blue bottle, what color bottle do you have to send? And he said, "Mujhe to bas bottle bhejni hai." And that actually was indicative of the education that's still required. So maybe it's not education for children, but it is, upskilling. So what we did is we launched a platform called Daraz University, which educates about 5,000 individuals every month for free. We teach them end-to-end everything about getting digitized. Of course, it focuses on our platform, like how to sell, but also, like you said, what does customer experience mean? What does it mean that if I get a question, I need to answer it? How should I answer it? If I'm on live stream, how should I behave? But the really cool thing we did is we actually then started partnering with different institutions. So we did a partnership with Karachi School of Business and Leadership, and we started offering them MBA courses for free, wondering maybe they'll enjoy it or they'll take advantage of it. In fact, we noticed that they started looking at things like business ethics or inventory management, and really upskilling themselves automatically. We in fact recently did a diploma course with Visa, where we had about 350, I think, sellers get diplomas actually for following a different, curriculum that gets them better educated for business and conducting business. So the point is that, EdTech is actually quite foundational to our business. It's not, perhaps you go to you go to the app and you order something, but behind the curtains, there's a lot of education that happens from a seller side and in fact from a customer side as well. From a customer side, teaching them the value of looking at a review or asking a question. And these are all nascent actions in Pakistan. So really telling people and incentivizing them, in some degrees incentivizing them. I remember at one point we used to pay people to just put up a picture review. You could put negative or positive, just so that other people could understand, okay, now if it's a toy for my cat, how big is it relative to the cat? Like, is my cat going to look like a lion in front of this toy? Then, so a lot of those things we were able to curtail and circumvent by educating them. And I think to this day, actually, what holds us, I think, at least our firm, the most proud is that we really do focus on educating. And at the end of the day, our mission is uplifting communities through the power of commerce. And through the power of commerce, one of the elements that I think that we believe is fundamental is the education. And the last point I'll add is that why is it that we use digital education? Of course, we're a digital company, but why is it important for us? The reason it's important for us is we think 1 to 1,000 in hours. Like we want to go very quick. We want something to break and then fix it. But we can't explode in the growth unless it's something that's very scalable, which is why digital makes a lot of sense, right? So if our sellers, for example, in fact, in one point we used to have in class, we have 88 hubs across the country, so our sellers could come and actually learn over there, or they could learn online. We actually had to turn off all the physical presence because they weren't coming. Every time, for example, they made a mistake and they hurt their KPIs to be able to do more deliveries. We could actually, because it was digital, we could say, hey, you messed up here, can you please fix this? So it was very targeted, like Arshad Saab said, it's very personalized, it can really cater to your needs, what you need to get upskilled on. And I think that's how we've been able to really take advantage of this arena.
Thank you so much, Ehsan. So what I'm hearing now is that there is a lot of importance of self-regulated learning. And this is something which is coming up from all the comments that are made by the speakers. And this is something which is the need of this hour. So let's delve more into it, that how can we take hold of this learning approach and then look at our current educational scenario and look at the EdTech facilities and potentials to further it. Oh, yeah. Yeah, sure.
So, I started off as a lawyer and now I'm an entrepreneur, but my real aspiration is to become a revolutionary. And the question I really would love to try to answer, and I think we can answer it. How do we give a decent education to 85 million kids, from grade primary to college in Pakistan? And I think you can solve the problem with EdTech. So let's do some math. Sorry about this, but I'm going to run you through a math lesson. The hardy, unskilled worker in Karachi gets about $5 a day. okay? Numbers keep changing because rupee keeps dropping, but let's imagine it's $5. So that means he makes roughly a little bit less than $2,000 a year, okay? With $200 a year per child in Pakistan, over 12 years, that's only how much? $2,400. I can guarantee you that child will get an exceptional education. Why? It's not that EdTech is perfect, like Janara said, there's a lot of things to be done on content, technology and all, but all these things are moving, right? The big issue is, I was inspired to go into this by Nicholas Negroponte, who came up with an idea of one laptop per child, but he implemented it very badly, but it's a great idea. So for $200 a day, you can give some kind of electricity, internet, a laptop that amortizes over 3 years, and so on, right? And that kid, over 12 years, if you give that kind of learning, which will keep getting better and better at a very, very fast pace, that kid will earn, if he only earns incremental what a Dihadi worker in Karachi makes today, he will earn that back 25 times over his lifetime, right? And I was an example, you know, my parents didn't have much, but I went to the best universities in the world through scholarships and then law school through loans. I paid it back, it was no problem. Why? Think about healthcare and education. In healthcare, your cost rises as you get older and your income is coming down. But in education, it's the opposite. The more you put in, especially at the basic education level, your income rises. So if we can give every kid a $200 solution, we will completely transform Pakistan. Issue is that that means $16 billion a year, but it's possible. It's possible today with blockchain, cryptocurrency, and other things. The technology is at hand to solve the problem of education in Pakistan, and you can solve it within a matter of years.
Thank you so much, Mahboob. This is so fascinating that you have brought in the role of frontier technologies as well that can bring in this kind of solution possible. And then let's see how building these partnerships. So I'm really very excited to see this speaker, the diversity of speakers bring in to this platform today. So I see that this kind of partnership is needed because like kind of ideas that are coming up through our conversations that have connections, very close connections of how we can learn from each other. And then through these common shared learnings, I guess this problem is no longer a problem. So let's further unpack this solution that Mahboob has presented.
Okay, so I'm going to take this to a different sort of area. So when we talk, we've been talking about children, we've been talking about what Ehsan said about educating our workforce, our sellers, our customers. We tend to forget that there is a large population in this country that has one or the other kind of disability. So whether it's hearing, whether it's visual disability, whether it's physical disability, technology and EdTech solutions can be used so effectively to cater to the needs of all of these people. So when we talk about diversity, we should not only be looking at women or children, we should also be looking at people with different types of abilities and disabilities. And we have seen that young people do recognize this and have provided solutions, whether it's through games, they've provided solutions to develop children's cognitive abilities, to deal with children who suffer from autism, deal with people who have hearing disabilities, so content is being developed and applications are being developed so that they can become independent on their own. And these are startups that I have worked with myself and I've seen how they have managed to not only develop the solutions, but actually evangelize those solutions. So let's talk about Connect Here, which is an application for people with hearing disabilities. So Azima, who developed this, she was 19 when she joined our cohort. And she said, I thought of this because both my parents are deaf. Wow. And I did not want that for everything that they required, they would have to talk to me or to my brother to assist them. I wanted them to be independent. And so I worked on this solution, and now they're able, if they want to apply for a credit card, the guy at the bank can converse with them because of the application. Otherwise, they needed one intermediary to do that. And now they are working with banks, multiple banks, media organizations, everybody to say, hey, provide this. So this is something perhaps next year we can have at KLF, that this should be signed at the same time. Because there could be people in your audience
That
who
is amazing,
actually
yeah.
cannot hear. So those are things that children, are, kids, 19-year-olds are thinking of that maybe is not occurring to us. Similarly, with Wonder Tree, which is developing games for children with autism, they have seen 50 to 60% improvement in those children, in their ability to actually enjoy life, to find joy in life, to improve their abilities. These are things that technology, education technology is enabling them to do. So that's why I think when we think of EdTech, we should not be thinking of it in just one way. We should be thinking of it in a diverse way, like this entire panel is doing at the moment. And, also my program. So when Catalyst Labs started 2 years ago, I was able to run the program across the country simply because we started because of COVID. We couldn't do it in person. But that enabled young women from all across the country to be part of the program. Otherwise, we would have restricted it to Karachi. It also enabled a lot of women who had multiple roles to play in their households, whether it is in the community, whether it's family, they were still able to be part of the program. So I think EdTech is something that enables that. It enables people to learn at their own speed, and be able to learn. So people learn at different speeds. And so something that may seem easy to me may not seem easy. Well, it should be the other way around. It would seem easy to him and not to me. So I might take longer, or I might revisit and try and understand it again, and then I would get it, right? So EdTech enables you to do that. So I think there is so much that one can do using technology, if one just does not close one's mind to the fact that this is what EdTech is and this is what it's not.
Absolutely. So this is fabulous that these kind of solutions are already being thought of and are already existing around us. So with this, I would like to engage Arshad in the conversation that, so we have this solution proposed, and now we have looked at the issue of access, inclusion, and all these things. So what are your thoughts on the issue of the recent concerns about surveillance and the issue of in academic integrity? So you are in the publishing sector. So these are some of the things that might have impacted your own work as well.
So, we've all heard about ChatGPT and how it is completely transforming content creation. And, there are write-ups about how students in the future will be able to write essays and which are AI generated, and it would be very difficult for educators to be able to differentiate whether what is original work of a child and what has been generated by the computer. So two thoughts on that. One is that whilst there are AIs that are being developed to enable people or content creation, there are also apps that are being developed to check whether it is plagiarized content or whether it's created by a human. But having said that, I think the future of education is going to change. And to me, education is an enabler. And the child's learning in the future with digital, you need to learn different skill sets, different, and it's going to be very different from what we have learned when we were studying, or the current generation is learning what they were studying. And education and curriculum delivery will need to evolve to include all the developments that are taking place through digital, and a different set of learning requirements will happen. So while in the past our memory was being tested, there was a time when you used to memorize all these times tables. Now nobody needs to do that. Similarly, in the future, you may need to use different skills, and the role of education is to teach you and equip you with the new skills that our children in the future will need to be successful. So we would embrace this change, and how digital is supporting a child's learning.
Very well said, yeah. So a lot of rethinking and re-envisioning is required on part of us educators in particular. So I would bring back this response to Mahboob, that how have you been responding to this challenge of academic integrity and kind of this whole idea of surveillance? So it is happening in education as well. So some thoughts on that.
I think there's some more technical things like plagiarism checks and so on. But the more general point is that you see, if you look at what's happening, a kid can go to Google, find something, now use ChatGPT and so on. You cannot fight this with the tools of the 20th century. You can't say, oh, I open up your books and I'm going to figure out whether you've cheated or not. So you have to use the tools of the 21st century to check the problems of the 21st century. So if a school, just as a school can, as a positive matter, become more effective using technology, as a defensive matter, a school or educator has to embrace that technology and figure out ways to check the problems, but also provide new opportunities. I just want to go back to something Jahanara said, and just it triggered a quotation from Isaac Asimov, and I think it encapsulated very well what you had said. He said in the pre-industrial age, education was personalized for the few. The Lord would get a very personalized education. Then we went into the industrial age, and we had education that was depersonalized for the masses. Same education for everybody. But now we are moving into the post-industrial age. And the promise of the post-industrial age is personalized education for the many, for the masses. Every person will have his own education. And so this is one of the very exciting things about the revolution that is actually upon us already.
So I just want to add to what Arshad was saying about ChatGPT. So to counter it, and what Mahboob said, that we have to use tools of the current age. So what Stanford University has done is that they have developed an app called Detect GPT, which can detect if the essay has been written by a machine, by AI, or whether it's an individual. And it's 95% accurate. So that's amazing. So.
All right. Thank you so much, Ahara. So, so these things are going to continue, and one thing that has come out is that embracing these newer technologies that are coming in, and as educators, it's very important to play with these new tools and understand them in a way that they will be, in the longer run, be used or be useful for enhancing learning. So that's the whole core promise that EdTech brings us, right? So with this, I'll go to Ehsan. Connecting this point of surveillance. So for you, surveillance is really very useful, right? So tell us more about it so that we can bring in some.
How so?
I don't know.
What's actually more relevant to us is obviously personalization. And I think AI and tools like ChatGPT are an extension of personalization in a very hyper-localized way to some degree. And I think we are still probably light years behind what ChatGPT is able to do. But even what ChatGPT is really able to do is really be able to cater to an individual. And I think what, a lot of what we've spoken about today is sort of as the software solutions or the outputs that we can drive. But what I think was also very important to keep in mind is, today in Pakistan, there's about 80 some odd million internet users, right? So when Mahboob Sahab spoke about 80 some odd million students that need to be enabled, I think there's a lot of policy work that's also required to be able to enable EdTech and digitization. If you are still going to be in a universe where we put heavy customs on things like mobile phones, you're not going to be able to get to a world where you can easily scale that. So if when he speaks about $200 a year, you can't have a phone that has duties that are more than that. You can't have laptops that have duties more than that. So I think that's also important for us to keep in mind. Obviously, this is in a world where I'm being ignorant of the needs of dollars, but it is also important for us to keep in mind that this is an area we need to prioritize and we need to push forward as well. Is that these things, the cost is brought down so that it is accessible, that we can actually, we can talk about the tools that we can put into that, but until we can actually get get accessibility of the internet, of these devices to more than 80 million people. We have, mashallah, over 220 million people in this country. 80 million should not have access to internet. It should be a lot more, and the digital tools should be a lot more accessible. That's the power of them, is that wherever you're sitting in the country, you should be able to use it. And I think the cost is still extremely prohibitive, despite the fact that the cost has been going down exponentially globally. We, I think, as citizens also should be questioning how at least digital tools are being priced.
Agree
Yeah,
100% with what Ehsan said, because I think that's where policymakers come in, that when they decide about duties on mobile phones, smartphones, laptops, then they cannot be talking about digital Pakistan at the same time, because it's not going to happen. So these are things that I think policymakers need to get to be on the right side of in order to make sure that this happens. And yes, it should happen for 220, 230 million, I don't know how many people we have in this country, but an increasing number of people, and everybody should have access, because now that we are using technology to address things like agri, to make sure that we are more effective as farmers or as educators or whatever area of business we are in, we can use mobile phones for that, to detect early disease in crops, all of that. And we can't do that unless we have access. And so absolutely 100% agree with Ehsan on that.
I just want to put this in the context of education. You see, if you go into let's say Food Panda and order some food, or Kareem and order a car, it's 5-minute engagement. Maybe food is 10 minutes, Daraz is 15 minutes. You know what I mean? I don't know what your average user time is that right or more?
Yeah.
But in education, you need to be engaged through a digital medium 2 hours, 4 hours, 6 hours, 8 hours a day. So that means connectivity, devices, all of this becomes a much bigger challenge. And we got to solve this challenge, otherwise we will just be providing all these fancy content and software for the upper segment of society again.
And one of the things I think we haven't talked about is the privacy of data and the use of data by all these people who are collecting our data and using it to push content our way. What's being done about that? And I know that there is a Data Protection Act which is sitting at cabinet level that has not been approved. So those are things at policy level that we should be looking at when we're talking about EdTech, talking about pushing a lot of technology to counter some of the problems this country faces. But yeah, when I am sharing my data, like when I walked in today, there was data collected from me.
Yeah.
And when my mobile number was asked for, I asked the young lady, I said, why do you need my mobile number? I've given you my email address and my name. That should be enough. She said, in case we want to contact you, I said, I'm not comfortable sharing my number. And she was fine with that. But I think we tend not to question. And then we share our data with anybody and everybody. And that is misused, especially by people who are collecting a lot of it.
Absolutely. Thank you for bringing out this important point of privacy. And along with that, the safe use of data is also very important that you have highlighted. We have touched upon this serious issue of like, this is a big problem, right? And for that, we need to sit together across disciplines, across fields, and we have to have some policy implications as well. So what are some of the other game changers for us in this field to whom we should look at or should invite in these kind of conversations along with our policy makers? Are there any other players that you would want to suggest who can help us in figuring out and making this, first of all, accessible? So access is the entry point, right? So access is I see it a bigger issue. So any thoughts on that? What are some of the players?
Telecom companies, young people. I think there should be less of us and more of the youngsters who understand EdTech and who do understand what is needed and who understand the challenges and the problems a lot more than we do. I know it's important to have experience on panels, but I think we should also try and bring in a lot of younger voices, because sometimes what they have to share is a lot more important than what we are saying they need. We should ask them what it is they need and how we can improve the experience for them. Of course, Ehsan is much younger, so it's all right.
So yeah, automatically it comes to you.
I'll just add one thing to this, is I think the brilliant thing about capitalism is that once you have the right incentives, the right people will come and solve it too. So telcos will look to solve it if policymakers incentivize it the right way. Young people will also gravitate towards it, as will large organizations. And to be honest with you, and Mahboob Sahab, I'm sure would be able to tell this much better than I would, but education is not necessarily an NGO. It's not that you can do well and you can monetize and you will be able to build strong businesses out of it. And as long as the policymaker's job is to really come up with the right incentive structures, and then everyone else will hop on. And I think, and I wanted to also mimic what Jehan said, I think the second biggest stakeholders are definitely the telcos, because of their ability to reach people. They have the most, they've invested in terms of infrastructure across the country. So they would be the second biggest stakeholders. But again, if we give them the right incentives, they will definitely be able to find ways to grow it.
And Arshad, I think maybe you can address this. We also have a cultural aspect that we need to figure out, because a lot of times that education is not getting to all the people that we want it to get to is because of the cultural barriers, the resistance that many people have to educating girls, to educating kids, because they should be actually working and generating revenue for them. So maybe this is something we need to also talk about, because that's something that will be harder to address.
So, thank you, Janara. I think digital technology, to me, is the great equalizer, because what it enables you to do is to have content that you can use at your own time and convenience. So, if you're talking about girls, and if the parents or the girls observe parda and they don't want their daughters to go out into schools, they can study or read and learn at home. Similarly, children who are engaged in supporting their families either in fields or at home and cannot go to school, they can also access digital content at their own convenience at a time that is suitable to them. Now the question arises, how do we do that? How do you get the hardware and what Mahboob was talking about, the $200 a year that is required to run? You need a tablet or a laptop, you need internet connectivity. That is where the collaboration comes in. So organizations like us who are content creators, organizations who are hardware developers, the telecom companies who provide internet connectivity, but above all, the role of the government or the state or even multilateral donor agencies. You know, education is one sector in which Pakistan has been getting a lot of support throughout the past decades. How we've used that is in creating brick and mortar schools, which then eventually don't get used as schools at all. You know, there have been examples where they've been used by even to keep your animals, but not children and for teaching. The other big challenge is that so these multilateral agencies, the government, you know, the government in Pakistan spends about 2.5% of the annual GDP on education. Now that by no means is the right amount that should be spent, but even that, if used effectively, why not pilot a village or an area or a geographic location where we enable the children with hardware, with digital hardware, with internet connectivity, with digital content, and see how that works. Support that. Train your teachers to be able to become digital natives, to be able to teach better through that digital content. I think an integrated approach with all the stakeholders on board will provide an ideal situation, especially for the out-of-school children as well.
Thank you so much, Arshad, for bringing in, wrapping up all the important stakeholders and also bringing in the most important piece, I guess, the educators or the teachers who are part of this process in this whole conversation. So I think we had quite a useful conversation on how EdTech has been infused into our education sector, and not only education sector, but other sister fields as well. So with this, I would like to invite questions from the audience, and I would appreciate if you can have a very brief to the point question, and if you want to direct it to the, in particular to a specific speaker, please say the name of the speaker and then say out the question. Yes, please. The mic is, okay. Yeah, please. Yeah, this lady, yeah. Thank you.
My question is to the panel, and I wish to ask about, this is in relation to teledensity, which has grown exponentially in Pakistan. And there has been a tremendous negative impact, because if you see the terrible incident that happened last evening, all of that is also triggered by social media and engagement with technology that has taken a very tragic tail because of the TTP and how it's growing. So is there any kind of state engagement with all of you or any of you where this has been countered through some initiative in all these areas, because they have access to technology, but they don't have the right narrative? I hope I'm able to make my point clear.
So you have a very valid concern, but I think just like when we're educating our children generally on the characteristics that they should be honest, they should be, you know, fair with people, all of these things that we're teaching our children to deal with in the real world, it's the same thing. We need to educate them on how to use technology fairly. And yes, cybersecurity is an area that we need to focus on, but then kids and adults need to be educated on how to keep themselves safe online. So this is also a role of education, that you need to know how to protect yourself. Now, if you've been watching television recently, and you will be hearing about all the scams when people pretend to be bankers and they try and convince you to part with your money, give your password to people. So, you know, all this is also a matter of awareness. If you're unaware that you should not be giving your password to anyone, then you shouldn't. So I think it's a question of education, it's a question of awareness. And it's a question of being secure online just as you are secure offline. Yeah, so you educate them through technology. Oh, you mean we should be talking to terrorists and the potential recruits? Yeah, I mean, yes, I agree that we should, but that we can do offline as well as online, and I think, or, you know, I don't know. I mean, it's not that simple. I think there is a lot of reasons why people opt for those things because they feel that there is a lot of injustice as far as the country is concerned. They are convinced over time and brainwashed. I don't think it's going to be just social media or just any one way in which we can have a counter narrative. But yeah, it can play a role. Definitely agree with you.
Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you so much. Yes, please.
So I work in EdTech. I am a part of Alt Academy. I work in their business strategy and customer acquisition department. And so you guys offered some valuable insight. But I just wanted to add and also wanted some advice from you guys that when we step on the ground, there's a lot of like opposition you get from traditional educational institutions like schools, who then tend to view you as your direct competitors and not as someone who's there to facilitate you in development. And that is something that we have been trying to challenge. But there's just there's so much, I don't know, hate that we get, or also like people tend to convey it as a negative way. So how do you tend to challenge that? Because this is like a perspective and like a total dimensional shift from regulating learning to empowering students. How do you like kind of address this particular question? Thank you.
So I think Mahboob, please.
So yeah, this is a good question. I ask it every day, so I don't have an answer. But what I can say is there's a distribution curve. There are people who are willing to innovate. There are people who are early adopters who will adopt because they feel there's a good reason. Then there's the early majority, people who will come in when others are coming in. That's more difficult. So we are still in a stage where we are dealing with innovators and early adopters, people who are more willing to adopt. So I don't think we are at a stage where, like I said, the inflection point has happened, but you have to find people who are as passionate about you, about bringing about change and using technology, and there are enough there in Pakistan, mashallah. And COVID has opened up people's minds.
And you know,
So, but I don't think you can expect, 100% adoption in any community or school system or even group of teachers.
And
So you have to navigate
people
carefully.
are always threatened by things they don't understand. So I think being able to convert one person at a time is a good idea. I know so EdTech doesn't just center around those solutions that provide education, but also there are school management solutions that many startups have come up with. So they work with schools and make sure that they help them automate their school system and the delivery, collection of fees, stuff like that. And that's one entry point. So once technology becomes less threatening, then maybe this can be seen. And then this should be viewed as a partnership, what we were talking about earlier.
I just want to add one thing really quick on this, and it's not necessarily about education, but really this is a common problem that any business would have, is that you would have certain individuals that would push back. And at least what we have found, if we're launching something new and there's a lot of pushback, is in the beginning, it's finding anyone with the least amount of resistance, because like Mahboob Saab as well, you will have certain players who will only come later. And so if you can, even if they're small, it doesn't matter. It's just getting into the door and being able to really facilitate and get your narrative straight. So whether it's education, whether it's us solving a different problem, but this will always be there when you want to do partnerships. Some will see you as a threat. Because everything new seems like a threat. So it's really being able to find that even if they're small, if they're just acceptable to the idea, that generally will get more doors open in the future.
And also approach it from the parent angle. Sometimes it's parents that convince schools that, hey, we want our kids to be technologically able to handle things. So sometimes that pressure will make sure that the school adopts EdTech rather than resists it.
So thank you so much, Jahara. I think this is connecting back to our point of engaging all the stakeholders in this area. So it will be important to engage all those who will be benefiting directly or indirectly with EdTech. So I hope this answers your question.
Madam,
Yes,
my
please.
question to Jehan, that during the COVID, government announced that there should be online education, and a student attended for 2 years online classes and then appeared in the exam. But now the HEC is saying that online education has no credibility, and either it should be a hybrid or physical education. So, and their degree may not be accepted to the private sector, that they are the product of online education. And so, I mean, this is a really confusing statements from the government side. And so what will happen? I mean, you will recommend to government that what should be done? That further, there should be a hybrid way of education, using the Padlets for teacher can ask questions and students can answer on their tablet or their smartphone. So education technology can be used in the classroom, but not that physically the teacher is not there. So, I mean, HEC recommendation is correct or wrong? It should be hybrid.
I completely agree. I'm sorry, Janara has outsourced this answer to me. So
Yeah.
I completely agree, and the evidence also points out that hybrid solutions are the best. And actually the government is trying different things, but they're also very supportive of hybrid. We are working on a big project with Ministry of Education to launch more EdTech, but also on a hybrid basis. Definitely the blend of teacher, face-to-face if possible, remote if possible, self-learning if possible, these kind of mixes of technology work better than one solution.
So I'll be less diplomatic than Mahboob has been. Yes, HEC and various government departments sometimes go back and forth on policies, and I think this is something that we need to continue to tell them that, look, hybrid does work, and they should be encouraging it. Just like employers, when COVID happened, encouraged hybrid work, and some of them are going back on it, but some of them are saying, hey, this is great because we don't need to spend a lot of money on workspaces. Many of our employees can work from home. So I think the pressure needs to be on the HEC that this works, and why is it not possible for us to continue this hybrid model? So yeah, you're absolutely right. I agree with you.
So I will just take this would be the last question, so please continue.
Okay, Assalamu alaikum. So I'll be like quick and short. I have 2 questions and a request. I am also from a startup, a tech startup. My first question is like why it's very difficult to contact or pursue people or, can you hear me? Okay. Why it's like very difficult for small startups to make connections. Okay. My second question is, as the sir said, that still the entire world is moving towards online education. We still like Harvard, Oxford, they all are offering e-MBAs, okay? But still, on the ground, I'm facing this problem that I'm not able to register my online legitimate school from government, because still, after investing all my money in developing the technology, I have to put a check in the box that the school has to exist physically. Okay, so these are my 2 questions and a request that I have a display outside, and we have introduced education in metaverse, and I really want Ma'am Jehan and Sir Mahmood to please come visit and give us a small review and feedback.
Thank you so much. So yeah.
I mean, I can maybe talk about small startups, the first part of your question. I think there's a lot more facilities now that help startups. There's a lot more, Jehan has done a phenomenal job having incubators who can actually facilitate. There's also separate incubators and focuses on, for example, female entrepreneurs. And this is, I think it's part of a journey, and it's one of those where you have funds coming and you have exits happening, and at some point it explodes and you get a lot more, focus on this. And I think we're somewhere in the very early parts of that. So you saw a lot of funds coming into the country for startups a few years ago, and then obviously the markets, I don't need to explain what happened, but obviously they became very challenging. So that took a bit of a backseat. But having said that, I think as you get some success stories, this fuels very quickly as well. So obviously you have some support right now, you have decent support, and it's been increasing significantly, but I think you'll need to see some significant success stories. And when that happens, then generally this follows. And you have, whether you have exceptional talent also then gravitating towards startups and starting their businesses, and then both of them sort of meet at some point. But you can't also have, it's hard to get exceptional talent to do startups if they're unable to raise money, if they're unable to get exits, or even if they get an exit, they're not able to send money overseas, right? So some of those things, you need a little bit of that to come together. And inshallah, hopefully, I think once the markets pick up again, there's no reason that the startups that raise the money should not be able to do it again. We still have a big population. We have a significant population that's below the age of 30, very young, still reasonably digitized. So there's all the ingredients in the recipe still make sense. But I think there's that support. Unfortunately, it's a bit of a chicken and egg issue.
So final
And just just to build on that, your other question was around the role of the government, so look, no easy answer there, but we as educationists need to continue working with them to create an enabling environment. And I know that Janara and others have been doing a lot of work on that, to provide them with the right kind of advice to enable technology and to enable e-schools and digital teaching to support and improve access to education.
Thank you, Arshad, for your comment. So I would
Also,
just one
Mahboob and I will come and visit your stall.
yeah.
One last response. You see, India, there are more than 420, 420 startups that have received over $3.5 billion of funding. But in Pakistan, there may be 30 or so educational startups which have received less than $20 million in funding. So what has happened is many of those companies have started collaborating. Like we collaborate with 5 companies plus many other players in the market. So I think to pick up on something Arshad Saab said earlier about collaboration, Keezy, somebody or the other said, the point of the digital revolution is to amplify relationships. This is complex business, and especially when you don't have enough money in the system, you need to collaborate more. So we'd be happy to collaborate with you, but I think we all need to work together much more so than in the old way where somebody just selling a textbook or running a school.
So thank you so much. So it has been a very engaging conversation. Before we conclude this session, I would like to just summarize the key takeaways that we have brought in from this conversation. So I guess it's the time we have to reimagine education for the 21st century, and almost first quarter is about to end. So it is high time that we reimagine education for this time and for the coming time, which is highly unpredictable. And EdTech is one of the ways to explore the potential of it. And we have such wonderful success stories from our speakers who have shared with us. So with this, I think partnerships are the key. All of us need to seek advice, seek lessons learned from each other, and have these collaborations, effective partnerships. And then policy implications are very important. So these have to go towards policy level. And with that, finally, the capacity building for this newer reimagined education is also very important. So 3 key takeaways are very important for moving forward toward educational technology in Pakistani landscape. So with that, I thank you, my respected speakers and my valuable audience. Thank you very much for being with us this afternoon.